Today on Bridges, we will be talking about motherhood, the joys, the challenges, and even facing and overcoming mommy guilt. I'm Monica Schmelter. I'm so glad that you could join us for Bridges today. Today is all about motherhood, and my first guest is Michelle Moore, and she is an extraordinary mother, and she's going to share with us from her heart about her mothering and the battles and challenges that she's faced. And Michelle, it's good to have you on Bridges today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And you know, you are just such a wonderful, loving mother. I've known that about you for years. And I want us to start with your own story of what you faced with your mom, because at a very young age, your mom abandoned you.
Yes, and so I was an only child, and so you know that when you're an only child, your playmate and everything, your whole life really revolves around your parents. And so my parents were divorced. They were married and divorced twice by the time I was 5, and so my mother and I were very close. And
Sure.
then at 14 and a half, she disappeared, and really just I say fell off the face of the earth. And so she was really, later on I would learn that she committed what we now know as an identity fraud, or identity theft. And so, but you know, back then there really wasn't that term. But so it's interesting because what I ended up finding myself really thinking, and really a lot of my focus has been with my children. I have 2 sons, and my focus has really been about giving them what I didn't have.
Yeah, really, it's like you went through that abandonment with your mom, and God has been so gracious to you to help you forgive your mom and process through that. And Michelle wrote a book about that called Abandonment to Forgiveness. And I love reading stories about forgiveness. It's a wonderful story of faith and how God helped you come to that place. But out of that abandonment, God's goodness and forgiveness, it was like your goal became like to be the best mom ever, to give your children everything you did. And you are the best mom. All of us as moms, you know, we face mommy guilt, we face challenges, and your family really went through an accident and a crisis.
Yes, yeah, it was definitely a crisis. So Carson, when he was 10, my younger son, accidentally shot himself with a 12-gauge shotgun. And I really knew nothing about guns and didn't know really, like I said, just anything. I had never held a gun. I didn't know anything about a gun. But what I did know is that God was in the middle of it. God had shown, I'd had a warning dream 5 days before. And so, you know, it was interesting because I thought that when my mother left and all of that entailed was going to be the worst thing in my life. And what I found was this was by far so much more traumatic for me.
Oh, I just can't even imagine. And for those of you that are watching, I'd like for us to keep in mind that, you know, accidents happen. And we can all say, well, this and that. Accidents happen in the best of families and to the best of people. Accidents happen. And so this accident happens to, and this is your younger son, is that right?
Yes.
Carson, because you have Carson and Dylan.
Yeah. So I do want to say the gun was supposed to be unloaded. We did not know we had a loaded gun in the house. It had always been unloaded. And it wasn't until 2 days after the accident that it just came to me, and I gasped, and I grabbed my husband and said, I know how the gun was loaded. And it was just like God had just reminded me that in the middle of the night, one January night, which this was 3 months earlier, I had woken to my husband loading his shotgun and telling me that somebody was in our home. He thought there was an intruder. In fact, he didn't think. He was adamant somebody was in the house.
Sure.
And so, so when he came back through from coming through the home, and in the middle of the night, he said, "Oh, there's, you know, everything's fine." And I remember hearing in my spirit tell him to make sure the gun is unloaded, but instead, I just laid back and tried to just kind of, you know, grasp, you know, get my air back. And, you know, because obviously when your husband thinks someone's in the house in the middle of the night, the fear just ripped through my body.
Of course it did.
You know, and you're
course.
praying that it's not really one of your children that he heard, that he doesn't accidentally shoot one of them, you know, whatever, thinking it's an intruder. You know, there's a million fears that race. What if something were to happen to my husband? And, you know, what would happen to the kids and me? I mean, just all of that. And so but it was, I really absolutely say it's a miracle I even remembered or recalled that. And then I even remembered hearing that in my spirit, but I did not say it. I didn't.
Right. Because, Michelle, in the middle of the night, and you think that there's an intruder in your home, and you're just trying to stay safe. And so I'm sure that probably when you heard everything was A-okay, your body was just so thankful that you could go back to sleep.
Exactly.
And the only reason I even say that, accidents happen is I think sometimes people can be very unkind to one another and be very judgmental. And accidents could happen to anybody. And this was an accident that happened in your family.
Yeah.
And yet your whole family, even in the crisis, you prayed and you stayed together and you got the medical help and the counseling help, that was needed. You and your husband are wonderful parents, and you had such a journey. And I want to hear how God was faithful to your family in the middle of this crisis.
Well, I think the first thing is I'd had the warning dream. So the warning dream was very clear. The bottom line to the warning dream, the interpretation was, call on me. I will always fight your battles for you. All you have to do is call on me, say my name. And so I knew 5 days later that, and God had revealed to me an hour before the accident another part of the dream, which was that an attack was coming and that it had not happened yet. And so, but that an attack was coming. And so, of course I would have never guessed this. Mm-hmm. What I would say to you is that God showed up in so many big ways. And even in the midst of people who turned their back on us or did things that they shouldn't have done and were very hurtful, or people that weren't there for us that we thought would have, of course, always been there for us, whatever, people let you down. But my son Carson and I dealt with PTSD. We were both diagnosed immediately with complex PTSD. And so there's a lot that comes with that. It was, very traumatic having your son shot. And so, of course, the first thing the enemy does is come in and say, you're a terrible mother. And so you have to fight the would have, should have, could have, and all of that. And so I had this amazing story, though. So when Carson was first brought into the emergency room, and I was sitting, the lady gave me a chair and I asked me if I needed anything, and I asked for a small cup of water. And I was sitting there, and I could hear the nurses and the doctors just around the corner. And they were, just assessing him really quickly. And they weren't allowing me to go back there and see anything or whatever. And so I'm sitting there, and of course I'm in shock. We've just arrived at the hospital in the emergency room. And the paramedic and the EMT worker go outside, and I don't think anything of it. I know that they've been in the back of the car in the ambulance with my son, and I had not been able to be in the back with him. So the chief of police actually brought me.
Because you weren't home when this happened.
Well, I was there, and so but they didn't know I was there. And so when they took off to go to the hospital, we actually beat the ambulance to the house. And so what happened was I'm sitting there, and all I can think, and this is just the enemy that comes in, is that all I could think is what a terrible mother I am, that my son had to have needed me in the back of that ambulance. He had to have needed me. And I wasn't there. I remember running down the sidewalk, running toward, the ambulance, screaming, asking for the police to stop the ambulance, and so I could get in the ambulance, and they took off. And so, and it turned out later, I asked them, why did you leave without me? And they said, oh my goodness, you were there. And they were just, blown away and felt terrible. So it wasn't intentional. But I remember sitting there thinking to myself, what a terrible mother I was. And the paramedic or the EMT worker came back in, and I wasn't really paying attention to her. And she came up to me as I'm sitting there with this little cup, and I'm hearing the hustle and bustle and everything, and I have no idea if my son, what is going on. Is he going to walk again? What is damaged?
Because
what
it
isn't?
was serious.
It's 12-gauge shotgun, which at the time I didn't even really know what that meant either. I knew nothing about guns.
Well, see, I don't know anything about guns, so I wouldn't know that immediately when you say that, but I remember the stories, and I remember that
it's powerful.
It could have been...
And so my husband has explained to me since then. And so what happened was she came in, and the EMT lady came in, and she put her arm around me, and I wasn't even looking at her. And I was just sitting there, and she said, you're such a good mother. And I knew that God had sent her. Out of the millions of things that she could have said to me, she's never even heard my voice. And the only thing she had to say to me in that moment was, "You're such a good mother."
And that was God really bringing you comfort in the middle of that. And in just a few moments, we're going to get to meet Carson, but he's doing really well, and God has seen you through.
What I would say to you, Monica, is God still performs miracles.
Amen.
Still performs miracles every day. He and my husband, my husband and I are both amazed at him. We're both amazed. We're proud of both boys. First of all, our older son was who called 911, and
that's Dylan.
Yes, Dylan did an amazing job, and I've told Dylan numerous times that he'll always be a hero in our eyes.
Absolutely.
But with Carson has never complained, not one time. Carson had to be on his back because of skin grafting and different things and numerous surgeries. But Carson never one time ever complained about anything. Lost all the hair on the back of his head, all these things. But God really did a work, and God really has just amazed, I think, our entire family. Mm-hmm.
And your entire family is amazing. That all of you came together in faith and love and got the counseling and the help. You all, this is what faith is about. This is what families are about. When accidents, when crises happen, we can pull together no matter what it looks like. These are some wonderful parents with two wonderful children. So I'd like us to meet Carson, if that's okay. Carson, will you come on up here? Carson, we can't wait to meet you. Hello, Carson.
Hi.
Hi, you look so good, so handsome. What do you want people to know about what happened to you?
Well, I have 3 things that I'd like to share.
Yes.
Well, first off is when something happens big, you really do find out who will be there and who won't, and that really hurt the people that didn't come.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry that happened.
And then you have a second thing?
You can take your time.
Well, the people that did come, I always knew that people loved me.
Yes.
It's just once my accident happened, I really didn't know how much, because my family, some of my family lives down in Indiana, and they came straight over.
Of course they did.
And my best friends, Jay and Mason, were in the car going someplace, and they literally drove straight back to come and see me.
I'm not surprised to hear that at all, sweetheart.
But yeah, it was very loving. And the third thing is you really do figure out that when you really need God, He'll be there when you most need Him.
Yes, He's always there. Michelle, would it be okay if we have the hero just come and sit next to you for a moment?
Absolutely.
Dylan, he's in the studio with us today. He's the family's hero. He's also our photographer for the day. Dylan, you really are a hero, and you just have a great family. So we're completely out of time, but you guys are just a testimony to God's goodness and being obedient. So thank you all for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back on Bridges, you're going to get to meet another outstanding mom who both of her children were diagnosed with cancer, and the expectation for them was not good. But both of those children are doing very well, and we can't wait for you to hear all about that in just a moment.
You can purchase a copy of today's show for $15. Call us at 615-754-0039 or send a check to the address on the screen. Please mention the program number on the screen.
The blood of Christ is the only cure. It gets down to the root of every single thing that ails us. There's not an addiction, there's not a generational curse, there's not any root of sin. There's nothing that the blood of Jesus cannot cleanse.
Visit MonicaSchmelter.com to schedule Monica to speak at your event.
If you're just joining us on Bridges today, we are talking about everything to do with moms, and we have one extraordinary mom with us today, Angel Richardson. And Angel, it's good to have you on Bridges today.
It is wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
You've done so much for us here at WHTN at the station, and we're just delighted to know you.
Yes, it's been so much fun. I just love coming, and I'm just so thankful that you all have just welcomed me in with open arms. So.
Yeah. And so Angel makes all these great treats. She's also known as your humble baker, but she's also a wonderful mom. And so I know you've been able to share one time just really briefly about your two beautiful children and how both of them are cancer survivors. And I know that that brings its own heartache, struggles, and also story of faith. So as we celebrate moms today, I wanted us to talk about that because sometimes as moms, we're given great big challenges to handle.
Oh yes, it's the most fulfilling, but also most difficult thing we can do that I've learned through this experience of mothering and nurturing and growing, because it's so important because you're bringing up little people. So it's like they're going to be big people. So you want to try to do your best, and just that, and then having the issues that, when they would come into this world that we've had, it's added those extra struggles because you're wondering if they're even going to be here, and that's like, it's a shocker to your whole system, and being a person of faith who trusts God with everything, it's still difficult initially. I call that initial shock, it's like, okay, it's a traumatic. You just experienced the trauma. You've just been told this news where your daughter, she has cancer and it's growing in her eyes, and she could lose her eyes. It's like, well, then it could get worse. It could go to her brain. It's like this whole domino effect of hits. They feel like shots. And then you're like, well, God.
How old was your daughter when you were given that news?
Ooh, she was 6 months. We had taken some pictures and we saw a glow in her eyes. And my mother-in-law, she was like, I think you all need to have her checked, because what we didn't know, what I really didn't have understanding about, but she knew. She was told because my husband had the same cancer as a baby.
Oh.
So that's what took us back, and that's why we knew to go ahead and get her tested, because his mother said so. When we did that, you do it in faith and be like, God, we just know the best thing has to happen because you can't fail us. So when you have things that hit you and they feel like shots to your chest, sorry, touch the mic.
It's all right.
And, you have to realize that even though these things in life happen, that if you stay with your focus on trusting God to get you through it all, then you can overcome anything. And that we didn't do everything perfect or right, but don't ever judge yourself and say you're unworthy of those good things, and just expect and trust Him.
Yeah, because only Jesus did everything right.
Oh, He's the only one.
All of the time.
Right.
I mean, we all have moments like that man in the book of Luke that says, Lord, I believe, help me with my unbelief. And all of us, when we're planning our families, we're counting on children that are going to be born healthy and that everything is going to be fine. And of course, that's what we want and that's what we believe for. The reality is that parents are blessed with all different kinds of situations and different kinds of children. And sometimes our faith takes us to places that we didn't imagine. And yet, when it comes our way, what you're saying is that you and your husband, you did have faith and you rose to the challenge and you believed for the best for your daughter, and it wasn't always easy.
And then when we felt like we were coming over that hurdle, then we're pregnant with little Maddie, and it's like, okay, the doctor told us some news that it's hard because they did all the genetic. St. Jude's is an amazing hospital. I have to say that. They're great. It's been a blessing to us. They did amazing things for us, and I'm thankful for that hospital. And when our son was born, they had already did the testing on my daughter, so we sent blood work at birth for Maddie just to have him checked.
And Maddie is
my
Matt,
son.
the boy.
Matt.
Maddie. Okay.
Matt. I call him Maddie.
Maddie. Okay.
He's got a lot of AKAs, Matt Man. But Matthew, let's say Matthew. Matthew we found out through his blood work that he had it as well. His was caught very early, and when he started treatment, he was only 3 weeks old.
3 weeks old.
So that was the time when anger wants to rise up and you want to say, well, God, what is going on? Where are you? Are we wearing a bullseye on our back? It's like you get into that, you can get into that place mentally. And I think I did there for a season where it was like, this was something we did wrong. What did we do wrong? Where did we make the mistake for this to happen? But we had to grow from that. No, God doesn't punish you.
He does not.
He doesn't use that kind of arm on us,
not.
you know. And so it's just me and my husband both understanding it's not his fault. It's not my fault. Him carrying that guilt, he thought, well, because it was genetic, it's all his fault. You know, those things we had to get over.
Yeah.
And for God to heal those areas of us, that guilt that, you know, our children are here. And so it's just knowing that, man, having that understanding and growth to know that God is just goodness. He's every good thing. He's every perfect thing for us. Just trust him and keeping your hope that it's not forever and that eventually you're gonna help someone else through. Because
that's right.
We live in this fleshly body, so you know, we can't expect to be heavenly here like that.
Right, because this is earth.
This is earth.
We're not to heaven yet.
Not yet.
You know, as we celebrate moms and extraordinary moms today, my prayer and hope for all of us is that we'll see that we all go through things on this fallen earth. And there are all moments probably that we say, God, why me? Why is this happening? Is it something that I did? Is this my fault? That's part of a faith journey. That's part of being human. But if we continue to walk through that while seeking God, he will help us process through these questions and all of these things. And so all of these really hard times that you and Jeremy went through and processing just, was it your fault? You know, were you being punished for something? Which the answer to both of those is absolutely not. Right. But there's still questions that we can ask as people. Now tell us about your children. How old are they and how are they doing?
Oh, they're doing amazing. Annalise, my firstborn, my first survivor, she is turning 9 next week.
9 years old.
She's turning 9 next week. And she is just doing amazing. The doctors thought she would struggle a lot with her vision because the tumor was so large, but she's a dancer. And so she's doing a lot of things that you think coordination would play a big role in, that she's just blossoming in. So we're so thankful for those gifts in her that God said, no, you're doing that. And Matthew, he's doing amazing. He is just turned 7.
7 years old.
And he's just an amazing, goofy kid. He loves life. He loves climbing things. And like typical boy, you know, giving you a heart attack every other second, trying to do things he's not supposed to, but just now we're at a place where it's like you can really see where those good things come to full fruition in your life. So we're just thankful for this season and seeing that glory come from those things that we felt like were, you know, at one point tragedy. You know, it's just good to be on this side and just keep giving God the glory, because you got to stay humble. You know, we have to stay humble and understand that life is life. And just continue to just move on through. And just as a mother, I think knowing that every day is a day to do better and to grow better and to be better, that you can't allow what's happened in the past to have you down about your future, because then that takes you down a dark path. And we learned that through this process, that, you know, if you start every day knowing that it's new, and that you can do better and be better and grow better, then you will.
Yeah.
Period. You just will. It starts here, because God gave us a mind to think. He also said that we have to keep our mind on good things for a reason. Mm-hmm. So,
because if we don't, every single one of us will go down that dark path, and we will stay on that path, because that's how those thoughts multiply, and we can all get ourselves in some really dark places mentally, emotionally, spiritually, if we don't do what the Word of God says, which is to renew our minds. And what you're really saying, Angel, is that you had all this junk going on in your life, and you could have really parked there.
Mm-hmm. Several times.
Yeah.
Could have took some good park spaces, RVs.
Yeah. But you fought that. Mm-hmm. And how would you encourage maybe a mom or a dad or even a grandma right now who they're in the thick of, you know, and it can be any number of things. Your children had that cancer diagnosis, but it can be other special needs issues. It can be just trauma in life, you know. And if we don't battle back, if we don't fight back, we won't ever get to the better season.
Right. I would say to continue to focus on those little moments that are good and just thrive from them. Because even when you know, my son is special needs now. He's had some things, he still hurdles, autistic, and so it's a daily growth for us. And, you know, if you wake up every day seeing what's wrong and what you didn't do right, and you feel, because moms, we're the worst judges of ourselves. We are so self-critical, and, you know, because we don't want to mess up. So, you know, I would say just refresh yourself. Make sure that you always go to God and say, well, what should I do next? I just talk to God like he's here. It's like, okay, all right, you need to help me out here, because I think I just, you know, it's just how I need to operate like that. I need to have him close to me.
Amen. We all do.
And so you have to see him with you, you know, because he's going to keep you. Those hard days, those tough days, those drain days where you don't feel like you can, you know, oh, I'm just so exhausted, I can't. Keep your mind knowing that it's going to get better, and keep God right there with you. Amen. Talk to him.
That's right.
A lot of times that's just what you have to do. Go ahead and talk about it. You know what? Oh, I feel like I just go up the backside of his head, and he's like, no, Lord, I can't. Okay, God help me, bring me back in. And he will.
Yes, that's right.
You know, oh, they didn't have that in stock at this store. Oh my gosh, I got to drive all the way over here. And it's like, he's going to put me off time. But God, it's going to be okay, you know? So it's just bring him into your life.
Amen.
Keep him in your life. Because when you start separating yourself from him, then you will feel alone, and it will be hard. It will be tough. You won't see a brighter, better day, you know, because everybody has hard days.
We all do.
Yeah.
And all moms, I think, probably suffer with mommy guilt.
Yeah.
And, you know, we live in a culture that, you know, it's all the mom's fault. You can have two children that live in the same household. One's confident, bubbly, the other one's insecure. And the mom's thinking, well, what did I do with the one that's insecure? But we're all people. We process things differently, and everything is not our parents' fault.
It's not. It's just how we come into this world and how we develop in this world. Everybody develops in their own way.
We do, and we all interpret things and people and places differently. I want to thank you for coming and for sharing your story today.
I was happy to be here and share. I just hope to help someone and tell them, hey, get up, do it again.
That's
Start
right.
fresh again.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because every day's a new day. Thank you again so much. We're completely out of time. So glad that you could join us. We've got to go, but we say goodbye and God bless you.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
When I truly turned my heart to the Lord, He took every sin I ever did away from me.
God really is your other half. God, He's the only person who can really, you know, fill those holes and cracks in your heart that you're so wanting someone to fill.
It's no good to have a big dream if you're not putting yourself in motion to go after that.
Prayer changes things. If you need prayer, write to the address on the screen. Call 615-754-0039 or email prayer@ctntv.org.